Have you ever heard Bill Swartz's imitation of Keith Jackson?
Absolutely.
Too often, or?
No, Bill Swartz is a longtime associate and a great friend to this day, and one of the most talented broadcasters who's ever been in this town, and has just an amazing, amazing gift for imitation. We used to, in the Como days anyway, we had the Como tailgate party. I don't know if you were playing, so you wouldn't necessarily have a chance to listen to that, but some of the, in my opinion, some of the best radio that's ever happened in this town. Larry Nelson, the legendary morning DJ, if you will, at KOMO, hosted it, and Swartz did all kinds of bits with Larry that they would drop in and out, and he would imitate anyone from Keith Jackson to Muhammad Ali, to Sammy Davis Jr., to Mike Lude, yeah, you name it. And his Bob Robertson is absolutely spot on. Bill went to Washington State for a time and did Robertson probably better than Bob did. But yeah, I remember Bill's imitations, and I would listen to that show as much as I could when on the way to the stadium or at the stadium, and just rolling with laughter at some of the stuff he did. He's an amazingly creative guy, and he was our sideline commentator for a number of years, and did a really first-rate job.
Bob, I look back on that 78 era with yourself, Mike Lude, Don James, Alan Stover, Gertrude Peoples. It just seemed like a real magical, organic growth that took place. And I'm very close to Alan Stover to this day, the same gentleman that recruited me in 1979 out of high school, the same guy that hired me as a stockbroker in 87, the same guy as I shared with you at your house the other day, the same guy that picked me up from my hip replacement down in Oregon and brought me back, came down and got me same day. I mentioned that you were coming to do the interview and how receptive you were, and he just put his hand to his heart and said, "Oh, Rondeau." And then when I mentioned Alan to you, I kind of got that same feeling, like you guys just kind of had something really special that you grew together. The respect and the honor, the humble, I mean, that whole group. Talking to Mike Lude, he's so eager to help you. 97, 98 years old. He couldn't wait to do the interview. He picks up the phone after one ring.
Right.
I don't know if there's anything you can try to sum that whole era up. I mean, even the coaches we had, not just the head coach, and not just Lambright, but Pease, Jim Morris Sr.,
all of them.
You know, Chick Harris, Coach Al. I mean, that's probably one of the greatest coaches I've ever.
You bet.
You know, Ray Dorr, Pink. I mean, it was just a really special time.
Well, and what a coaching tree that became, Jimmy, how successful those guys all were. And I think Don was always great at facilitating that and encouraging them to be the best they could be. And you know, if they wanted to go elsewhere, I'll help you along the way, because he had similar help. But yeah, it was a super high time. I remember 78 like it was yesterday. It was our first year, and bear in mind, Bruce King was the play-by-play guy in 1978 and 79, and I was his color guy, and then we had a guy named, an old friend of mine named Gary Johnson was doing our sidelines. But I will never forget our first game once we got it, because, you know, we were brand new to this, and is it going to work? Can we do this? And it was a conference game, a Pac-8 game at that time. Played UCLA that first year in the season opener, and it was a rainy September day in Seattle, curiously enough. And you know, we managed to get through it. Bruce had spent a good part of the week trying to learn how to pronounce this one guy's name that played for UCLA that had a whole lot of vowels in it. Tuiasosopo. Manu Tuiasosopo was a big defensive tackle for UCLA that day, and foreshadowing would obviously come and play for the Seattle Seahawks. They had Theodis Brown on that team, who would come and play for the Seahawks. And the biggest play of the game was a blocked punt that UCLA recovered in the end zone for a touchdown in a 10-7 win. It was their only touchdown of the day. And this little punk safety, freshman kid, goes in and blocks this punt. Kenny Easley was his name. And again, who knew the irony of it all, that Kenny Easley, Manu Tuiasosopo, those guys would all wind up playing professionally here in Seattle. But I just remember getting finished with that game that day and just sitting back, Bruce and I, and the exhilaration was just palpable. We did it. We got through this thing. We got it done, and we weren't too bad. It was an amazing day and one of the great experiences of my broadcasting career, to be sure. We celebrated into the night, and it was great fun. But again, I do remember that day. Huskies' only touchdown was a pass to tight end, really good player named Scott Greenwood, who would die far too young. And I'm sure you know Scott's name through the Husky program, and it endured later on with an award in his honor. But game one, well, I'll never forget it, and really one of the most special days I can recall.
I wanted to ask you if you were afraid of Don James, and then I want to rephrase the question. Was anybody not afraid of Don James?
I don't know. Afraid is not the proper word. I'll leave that for you players, because I know you guys were scared to death of him sometimes. But Don's door was always open. He was. He wasn't standoffish to the media, but the media had its place, and Don had his place, and at times ne'er the twain shall meet. But he was always super good to me, and super helpful to me. I respected him a ton. I didn't fear him necessarily, but I certainly respected him.
Do you have any phobias?
Do I have any phobias? In a professional sense, when I was doing games, obviously we all have the phobia of the great screw up, and the unrescuable screw up, if you will. And fortunately for me, there weren't a lot of those along the way. But you have dreams about those, and you have dreams about being late to the game and being ill prepared. Probably my greatest phobia was being unprepared, and I did everything I could do to make sure that didn't happen, to the point of over preparedness a lot of times. But that's the way it should be. But no real phobias other than that. I get a little queasy looking down from a great height from time to time. I'm not afraid to fly. Bruce King was afraid to fly, by the way. But no real phobias other than that. He did have a remedy, and
Of course.
yeah, Bruce was, when we first started doing the games, our first road trip, for example, was to Indiana, coached by this guy named Lee Corso, who's obviously gone on to have quite a name. But early in the season, second game of the year, we went back to Bloomington. And back in those days, we would go to the airport and meet the team at SeaTac. At the main terminal, the team would bus in and get right on the plane, but we would go through the terminal. And it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and Bruce says, let's go have a beer. And bear in mind, I idolized Bruce King. He was totally my mentor, and got me established in Seattle in a number of ways. But Bruce said, we need to go have a beer, and I'm going, well, okay. And as it turns out, that was Bruce's preparation for flying. And let's have another one.
He's scared of flying.
He hated to fly.
I'm afraid of public speaking, scared to death. And when we had that Hall of Fame ceremony, I was told 2 weeks prior I was going to speak on behalf of the 84
I remember well.
And I couldn't breathe. It was torture for 2 weeks. Couldn't sleep, over-prepared. I probably had 2 minutes to speak.
Yeah.
No, I think I was splitting it with Dan Ernestine, so maybe 1 minute. And Sonny came up to me, and he was having fun, and a couple of guys from Ashland, and I'm just like get away, Sonny. I don't want to. And then Swartz came up and said, "How you doing?" And I said, "I can't breathe. I have to speak." And he goes, and they had that huge, movie screen behind us, which just had my big fat head, And I was like, oh, it was just torture. And Swartz comes up and says, well, he says, don't worry, you're following Rondeau. And I'm like, great, the guy that's being put into the Hall of Fame. And that was real nice
That was a great night, by the
Yeah.
way. What a fun night, and what an amazing class of inductees. Not necessarily self-included, but boy, and I will always have special fondness for that '85 team, the Wild Bunch. And the Wild Bunch then, and as I found out that night, the Wild Bunch even now, as it turned out.
So you got to call both father and son with Nate and Jacque
Yep.
in your career. And Nate, of course, two sports, which adds an asterisk to it. Have you ever done that? Has that happened again in your career where you've had a father-son combination?
Well, certainly, you had Jim Morris Sr., who was on the coaching staff, and then Jimmy, who played for the Huskies. I was associated with both of those guys, and there have been others along the way. And you're moving on in your career and your life when I coached your dad, or I broadcast your dad too, by George. You're getting a little long in the tooth when that happens. But yeah, Jacque Robinson's one of the more unforgettable players ever to put on a Husky uniform. One of the great, I think, gamers of all time. Near as I could tell, Jacque really didn't care much about practicing a whole lot, but boy, would he show up on game day. Wow, and was as good and kind of a curiosity as a running back. He didn't look, physically, you weren't sure, he could do what he did, but that gift of swivel and deception and vision, and I mean, it was just crazy how many times you'd see the umpire over there trying to get out of his way and not knowing which, and wind up getting in his way because he couldn't tell which way Jacque was going to go. But extraordinary player, really durable, tough, great player on game day, as I say. And I was a little disappointed that Jacque didn't have a big pro career, and I never was quite certain why, but just maybe that work ethic of I'll be there on game day, maybe not so much in practice. I think that probably doesn't play too well at the next level, but he was an exceptional player. And then Nate, I've said before, and I'm sure I will always say, Nate Robinson is the freakiest athlete I have ever seen anywhere. Nate Robinson, perhaps boxing notwithstanding, based on his recent appearance, but I'm sure if he stayed with it, he would be good at that too. But just good at anything he did, regardless of the sport, the game, whatever. And Nate Robinson is Peter Pan. I will never grow old. I will never grow old, and he won't. But just some of the things he was able to do were just mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. Did you know Jacque, out of high school, was in the top 100 basketball players, and on that list was Patrick Ewing.
Yep.
And Michael Jordan.
I didn't know that, and
unsurprisingly
so. Just an exceptional athlete. Mm-hmm. And again, you look at the body type, and really, this guy can do that. And the same way with Nate, for different reasons. I mean, this little guy can do that. Just crazy. I got to know Nate's mom and Jacque's first wife, Renee, along the way. Lovely gal. We had some great times together when Nate was playing basketball here. Nate could have been as good as he wanted to be playing football, good as he wanted to be playing basketball. He was swimming and diving and gymnastics, just, like he was born to do it. Mm-hmm. Anything he took up, he was good at.
And Renee was on track scholarship, is that correct?
I don't know that.
Yeah, so I think Nate's mother was a track star.
But it
makes sense.
Would make sense.
Yeah.
Complete sense.
What play prompted you to coin the phrase, say, "Are you kidding me"?
There have been a whole bunch of them.
Was there just one that when it first happened, or is it just a...
some of Dante Pettis' stuff, those were "Are you kidding me" moments. It happens once, but if it happens 2 or 3 or 4 or 8 times, as it turns out, that's a definite "Are you kidding me" moment. I remember Reggie Davis's touchdown down in the desert in the mid '80s. That was an "Are you kidding me" moment. There were any number of those along the way, Jimmy. And probably, I've never ever been one for, well, what's your signature call? And that kind of gets back to our earlier discussion of, just be yourself. You don't need there's kind of the perception that if you're broadcasting, you've been doing it for a long time, you have to have a signature call, and so mine became Touchdown Washington. What a beauty. I've always said it was more perhaps a reflection of some dyslexia rather than genius. It's not like I stayed up till 3 a.m. What's my signature call going to be? How about Touchdown Washington instead of Washington Touchdown? I have always thought signature calls were a sign showed a lack of creativity and were a sign, if you will, of a little bit of laziness. So I tried to stay away from that kind of thing. Well, I don't know what to say otherwise, but I'll just go to holy cow, jumping up and down, holy smoke, whatever signature call might be.
So,
I never bought into that.
When they did your bobblehead, they want to put a signature call on there. Did they come to you and ask?
No, nope. I didn't even know that was happening.
You didn't.
Nope, that was
so they put on there whatever.
Another of the great surprises of that last week was the bobblehead deal, and I'll forever be indebted to Alaska Airlines for putting up some money to do that, and the university for even having the thought of doing that.
So my thought was, did you coin that phrase? But nothing close to that. It's just not Bob Rondeau.
Nope. I always enjoyed the storytelling piece of it, and always fancied myself not as a voice or as a play-by-play. I always fancied myself as a reporter. And a reporter by nature is a storyteller. There's a story unfolding. It's up to you to tell it as best you can. And I always took that challenge very much to heart, and tried to embrace that. Tried to tell the story in maybe different fashion, week to week, game to game, year to year. Try to keep it fresh. Try to have some fun along the way. Tried not to take myself too seriously, as I think some broadcasters do, and just try to immerse myself into the games.
So lots of research.
Absolutely.
Be yourself.
Again, that just comes. The research part of it is a piece of the preparation and the confidence that you're ready to do this. Much as you guys, you had a good practice week. We're ready to do this. We are set to go, and some weeks would be better than others, I'm sure. And it's the same way in broadcasting game. It truly is the next best thing to be in there, Jimmy. It's
so the same. Excuse me for interrupting.
I was just gonna say you're so much more into the game than just casually watching it. You're viscerally into the game. It should reach in and grab you and tear at you, and hopefully, if you're doing your job right, the listener should sense that and have the same kind of feeling.
So that competitive DNA that you have it's not you versus another sportscaster. It's not about winning that award. It's just you doing the best job you can for that game.
It's a test.
Yeah.
It is a test every game day, and it's up to you to ace it if you can. And I always approached it as such. Each game was new. I always really appreciated the college game because of its freshness, the changing cast of characters every 4 to 5 years, whole new bunch, and it was always so rewarding and so fun to watch freshmen come in and watch them grow not only as players but as people, through interviews and those kind of things, and watch these kids grow up into men and stay with them after they left and follow their careers after they left. But that changing cast of characters, I think, always helped keep me fresh, and I think helps to keep the game fresh rather than, and more in professional situations. There's a lot more movement now professionally than there was back then. But I always thought that if you had the same guys game to game to game, year to year to year, it might get a little pondersome. The college game was never like that. for me anyway.
So over all those years, did you see a major change in the kids from 87 to 2000?
Sure, I think back in the day there was a certain naivete that kind of came with the process. Your kid coming out of high school and going into college, it's a whole different deal, both competitively for sure, but it's part of your growth as a person, and going to college is a big deal. It is for anybody, and then you put playing a competitive sport on top of it. It's a really big deal. I think, that there was so much less information available then. Just the sensory onslaught and overload, the media that's available, the whole social media context, and I think kids are different now coming into college than they were then, and I don't know whether that's good or bad, but certainly it's a reflection of where we're all going.
Interesting. So watching the Pac-12 championship, did you watch that game, the USC Oregon?
No,
recently?
I was unavailable to watch that game. We had a family deal, and I didn't see that one, and this was one year that I was probably okay with that,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
Well, I watched it closely. And fourth quarter, 6 minutes to go, USC's down by 14 points, 2nd and 8. And the safety comes up and makes a tackle. It's now 3rd and 8, but he wants to go do the dance. It's 3rd and 8. You're down by 14, 6 minutes to go, and he does, I'm not sure what the dance is, but he does, he gets out there, so he's solo, does the dance, and I'm like, it's 3rd and 8 now. And you're down by 14. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the game, and I was talking to Timmy Peoples about it. And Tim said he said they don't respect the game.
Well, I think it's the me notion. Anymore, we are so starved for attention, and you have so many outlets that address that, be it all the social media, me,
Your
and
brand.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think too, kids watch TV. They see my hero in the NFL doing it. Why can't I? And I think coaches have to be a little more tolerant of it now, just cause. But as you would, I'm sure, attest, back in the day, there was zero tolerance for that kind of thing. And there would be a price to pay for it.
And we didn't want a coach as a cheerleader. And so I'm going through the Pac-12 list of coaches thinking who's not a cheerleader. I think the guy at Utah.
No question.
Maybe Arizona State. Other than that, I can't imagine Don James coming out there and giving you a body bump or.
No, it just.
And I didn't want him to.
It wouldn't be done.
I wanted that disciplinarian.
Sure.
And he had us scared to death, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday before he took the field, he'd come by and say, "Hey, I heard you like to hit 39," and shake, have some fun, and you're like.
Yeah.
You're already elevated. Then you come out of that tunnel and you go up a couple more feet higher, and then you see Bramwell cursing out the referees. It's like, I've never seen anything like this. And Don wants that. He's promoting Dr. Bramwell to chew out the referees.
Well, it is one of my favorite Don James stories. We had a gentleman, and I mean gentleman, that worked in administration at KOMO in the early days. A guy named Pop Haggerty, and he was a longtime official out here, knew Don, and Don used to enjoy telling the story of going up to Pop during a game, saying, "Pop, can you penalize me for what I think?" Pop said, "No, Coach, I can't penalize you for what you think." Don would say, "Well, that's good because I think you're a horseshit official." Funny then to me, at least, and funny now. But there was a sense of humor to the Dogfather that a lot of people, I think, were unaware of.
It was very dry.
It was very dry, but it was
there. The timing was there.
No question.
Yeah, the timing was definitely there. Do you have a favorite Husky play? Is that a fair question?
That's not a fair question.
Okay.
That's like, who's your favorite child? A favorite play, a favorite player. There have been just any number of them along the way, Jimmy. It would be absolutely impossible to pick out
The
a
answer
number
I've
one.
received from the other guest was the Freddie Small touchdown in the end zone on the kickoff.
Memorable
USC.
day.
Yeah.
I should talk about a couple of field goals in that game that my buddy Chuck Nelson kicked. I suppose I should pay him service that, but I remember that play. It was a great kickoff by Chuck, I guess. But
It was.
that was a wildly inclement weather day. The day the press box was actually blowing around, white caps on Lake Washington, et cetera. Said just a horrible day. SC was really good, but Washington kind of putting itself on the map back then. And Fred Small in the end zone,
520
touchdown
was
Washington.
520 was closed.
Absolutely.
You
People
called-
wearing the trash bags trying to
They
stay
let 'em
dry.
fly.
It was just crazy. And the press box literally moving, the old hanging press box at Husky Stadium, and you thought to yourself, oh boy, don't come down, don't fail me now. But extraordinary day, and really one of the great wins ever for the Dogs.
Pac-12 versus like the SEC, because I watched that Pac-12 game, the championship game, and then I immediately, and I haven't watched Alabama over the years, I watched every play of that Alabama-Florida game. And then I went back to Washington State, there's some Arizona State, I'm not sure who they
Well,
are.
and you're saying to yourself, man, there's some dudes out there. There's some dudes
Yeah.
on that field.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
And I didn't see that selfishness, though. I didn't see that me attitude from Alabama.
Nope. And not coincidentally, who's Nick Saban's most influential coach of all time?
Yeah.
Don James.
Right.
And Nick kind of runs his show that same way.
Mm-hmm.
But if you thought Don James was humorless, oh boy, Nick Saban,
Is that right?
whole nother deal right there.
I have no idea. Never met him.
But just the talent differential is becoming more and more apparent. It's a different brand of football from a physical standpoint.
Right.
Not necessarily from a schematic standpoint, or the offenses and defenses are so different. They're not, but the fellas playing those offenses and defenses are different. We saw that was a really good Husky team that played Alabama.
It was.
There were a bunch of pros on that team as well, and at times it was a little bit of a mismatch.
The score was misleading.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with
I
that.
felt like we were lucky to hang in there.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
But it really became apparent. Not only that, Jimmy, but just watching the whole specter of a national championship type program, year in, year out, year in, year out. Just the bigness of how Alabama does business is extraordinary. Whether it's their band, whether it's the buses they use, the gear they have, just the bigness of it all is decidedly different than what we see here on the West Coast.
The Final Four, they put Notre Dame in. And I'm not sure if that was the right move or not, but I watched the lines on Las Vegas, and Alabama's favored by 19.5.
Yeah.
How can you have the best four teams in the country and one team's favored by 19.5? I mean, even if they played Florida again, it probably would have been 9.
Probably would have been.
So-
And, to that, I guess I would say, Secretariat got beat a time or two when he wasn't supposed to. It could happen, probably won't, but Alabama's just been that dominant. And isn't it interesting that the guy who was just voted the best assistant coach in the country won the top assistant coach award? It's an old friend of ours named Steve Sarkisian,
Good for him.
who is
Good for him.
who is making more money as an assistant coach at Alabama than he made ever as a head coach at Washington. And again, that will tell you something, the bigness of it all. But yeah, indeed, good for him. I thought Sark did a really nice job here and got things rolling. He had a moment of doubt and pain in his life and his family and his career, and has rebounded from that spectacularly. And I think obviously will be a head coach again if he wants to be. But just the notion of of what it takes to play at that level. And you see the drain of talent, off the West Coast going to the SEC. Jacob Eason went to Georgia for a reason. It's tough, and I don't have an answer as to how that's going to rectify itself. If you're the Washingtons of the world, you can be as good as you can be, but can you be that good? Occasionally you can. 84, 91, those teams were that good, but it's only occasionally. Alabama every year, Georgia every year, boom, boom, boom. I think from just a competitive standpoint, league-wise, the Pac-12 is still super competitive. The middle is competitive. There's not a great chasm between here, and here, but it's the notion of that life at the top is different down south.
It certainly is.
And I don't know how you fix that.
I think we're a ways away.
No
I
question.
really do.
No question.
And I'm all for Jimmy Lakes. I'm cheering for him. I
Me
like
too.
him very much. And then I noticed yesterday Jackson's coming back. Otten's coming back, which was a real
That surprised me.
shocker.
Jackson Kirkland, whose dad Dean, well, and I do as well, has gone on to be hugely successful in his life. But Jackson can really play, but I think another year will do him a big amount of good.
Sorry to interrupt you, but that's another father-son.
There you go.
There's two of them.
There you are. Although I was done by the time Jackson started playing here. Jackson.
Sure?
I'm positive. Jackson's first year was 18,
Was it?
and I 17 was my
Can you check that, John?
my last. I don't think. I'm pretty sure he did. I don't think Jackson was playing here when.
This is his third year.
I think it's his third year, and he could have gone out this year, but
Right.
he needs to come back.
So you just missed him then.
Just missed him, but thought right out of the blocks, this kid can really play.
Right.
I thought he was their best offensive lineman the day he walked in here. I'm not sure where
So
we're here.
when we go to bowl games, Bob, is your responsibilities the same as they are in Seattle? You're just on the road for Como. So with that in mind, Rose Bowl versus Orange Bowl, which one was more fun? What was the difference between the two? I mean, you're on the road 2 weeks for both of them, right? Both.
Well, that's an interesting question in lieu of the fact that we did not broadcast the Orange Bowl, your Orange Bowl. That's the one game in my entire career that I did not do in which the Huskies played, because back then there was a national radio contract with NBC, who also had the television rights, but NBC Radio had an exclusive on the Orange Bowl, and we were an ABC affiliated radio station, and thereby, and it was grandfathered in, we were not allowed to do the game. So I wound up watching that game with a whole bunch of other people on a New Year's night, watching the Huskies beat Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, and reveling in it on one hand and kind of dying a horrible death on the other that I wasn't there. So Rose Bowl versus Orange Bowl, no comparison, Jimmy. It's the Rose Bowl. I did a game in the Orange Bowl later on. The Whammy in Miami was played in the Orange Bowl, so I got to see the stadium, and then another one when the Huskies really got whammied in Miami in 01, but never did the Orange Bowl game itself. Rose Bowl, of course,
Do you remember where you
whole
watched
different
it?
story. Yeah, I watched it in the house of a buddy of mine named Mark Kaufman, the late Mark Kaufman. He was the publicity director at Long Acres Racetrack. Lived over kind of the Montlake area, and there were about 25 of us watching that game at Kaufman's house that night.
Late
It was
night.
crazy.
Late night.
Absolutely. It was so much fun.
Fantastic. Now, you have a birthday coming up, did you mention last week?
February.
February, okay. So we got you a little gift for being on the show and for your birthday, and it's the cards on top there if you want to go ahead and open it.
You know me too well.
Did Richard come in?
Is he here?
Yeah. Richard Wilson.
Sweet.
Bob Rondeau.
Hi, Richard.
No, pleasure.
He's another Kennedy product with Brenno DeFeo's.
Okay,
Don't hold that against him.
I won't. Nice to meet you, Richard. Oh, this is awesome. This is the best part of it right here. This is great.
We got you some dicks there.
Oh, look at you guys. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's
Happy
beautiful.
birthday to Lafitte Pincay Jr. today, 74 today.
There you go.
Did his research.
We just talked about
He
him.
wants to take my spot.
As well he should. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've got a portrait of Lafitte Pincay from.
This is for you, Bob. Sorry.
Thank you. We just open that, kill that right now.
You got
I got a great Pincay story. We had a filly that ran down south named Coke's Classic.
Okay.
She won going down the hill at Santa Anita a couple times, and we went over and ran her at Hollywood Park.
Yeah.
In a kind of a sprint race, and she was like 9-5, and Lafitte's riding her for the first time, and she got smoked, and he comes back, gets off the horse, and this guy comes from out of the stands, gets up into the goes through the winner's circle, which was right on track, goes over to Lafitte Pincay and frickin' decks him. Swear to God. Boom! Disgruntled gambler
Lost some money, yeah.
that whacked Lafitte Pincay
Wow.
on the race.
Did he tell you the story? Or
No, I was there.
Oh, you
Saw
watched
it
it?
happen.
And the
I'm just-
security rushed him and...
Oh yeah,
He's done.
along with half the trainers that
Yeah,
tried,
that's the wrong
destroyed this guy, but actually came out of the stands and smacked Lafitte because my horse got beat so bad.
I always thought that downhill was dangerous, and I don't know horses
Oh,
as
it's
well
a
as you
great
do.
race.
love
it's
the
only
race.
dangerous where they cross the main track, but it really wasn't as
Because they
problematic.
go from
as-
dirt to...
They're on grass and they go downhill and they actually make a right turn,
Then
which
a
is
left.
different for them, but they don't care. They can
Yeah.
switch leads and, it doesn't bother them. But the key part was when they crossed the dirt track, whether they would, kind of jump the edge or
Right.
jump a shadow or something like that. But, they were fine.
Okay.
It's a super cool race. I always loved that race.
Yeah, I love it.
Really
too.
neat.
Yeah. I think you want to be on the outside on that,
Yeah,
pretty much.
it helps.
Yeah.
It helps.
Well, with
Going down the
all-
hill anyway, but
Yeah.
then you want to be on the inside, to save ground
I always
coming for
noticed that
home.
Ortiz, Irad, and his brother Jose, it seems like they always are working their way to the outside early. They
Well,
never-
turf
they-
races, there's differing schools of thought. The European guys, they all want to race what they call covered up. You want to just be in there covered up and just kind of
being tight and
being tight and
be ready.
bouncing along and the key to a good grass horse is they got to be push button. When you need them to go, they got to really go, and not all horses do that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of horses are just kind of one speed, but you need a push button for a good grass horse. Then just explode when the time comes. That's why those guys will sit down, save ground, just sit tight, covered up. And European racing is so different from ours. The grass stuff over there is they're all just loping along for a while, but
And
they can
go.
all really finish. That's where the race is won and lost. And so when that little hole opens up, you got to go.
And if you ever want to start a conversation with an Australian, which I've run into around the market here,
No,
you
man.
pick up the accent and just bring up Winks,
Winks,
and
yep.
they just
Bring up Farlight.
they just shine.
Racing down there is so good.
Yeah.
That's one race that I'm going to try to see before I die. I never could when I was doing football. Is the Melbourne Cup. It's
Which one, Bob?
the Melbourne Cup.
Mm-hmm.
They closed the frickin' schools in Melbourne for the Melbourne Cup. I mean, that's how much they love it. We went to Ireland last summer or last fall, and went to I went to the Curragh.
Okay.
It's so cool.
heaven.
But just the reverence they have over there, the way they appreciate horse racing. You pick up a newspaper, on the sports page is like 30 pages long, 10 of it's soccer, 5 of it's rugby, 15 of it's horse racing. It's unbelievable how much they love it.
It is.
And it's the same way in Australia. It's just, it's really cool. And I wish there were a little more of that here.
So when I'm looking at a horse's history, trying to pick a horse, and he's coming straight from Europe, So he's going the other way, isn't he?
They
It's the
do
same?
both. The Curragh, for example, is just massive. It's just this
Wide open.
huge pasture.
Yeah.
They ran the day we were there. They ran the Keeneland Stakes, Grade 1, for then 2-year-olds, and it was a flat mile on a straight mile.
Let's go.
And again, just they're kind of loping along, like 20 horse field, loping along,